Every weekday morning, for a quarter of a century, television viewers across America have tuned in to see the same familiar face behind the same desk. Kelly Ripa has built her entire career on being present, sharp, funny, and fully switched on before most of the country has finished its first cup of coffee. So when Monday, July 27th, 2026, arrived and her seat on Live sat empty, it was the kind of small disruption that says more than it seems to at first glance. Her husband and longtime co-host, Mark Consuelos, addressed it directly at the top of that morning's broadcast. He told viewers that Kelly sent her love, and then explained, with the kind of gentle humor spouses use when they're a little worried but don't want to alarm anyone, that she just had gum graft surgery. Not a small thing, he clarified, correcting himself mid-sentence. A real, fairly involved dental procedure, and one that was going to keep her away from the show for the rest of the week. Gum graft surgery is a legitimate medical intervention, not a cosmetic touch-up. It's used to treat gum recession, a condition where the gum tissue gradually pulls away from the teeth, exposing the tooth root underneath. Left alone, that exposure can lead to increased sensitivity, decay at the root surface, and over time, damage to the bone that holds the teeth in place. In more advanced cases, untreated gum recession can eventually contribute to tooth loss. The surgery itself typically involves taking a small piece of tissue, often from the roof of the patient's mouth, and grafting it onto the area where the gum line has receded, giving the tooth root the coverage and protection it's lost. It requires local anesthesia, a recovery period, and, critically for someone in Kelly's line of work, significant rest for the mouth and jaw. Patients are generally advised to avoid talking extensively, avoid using straws, and stick to soft foods for a period of days to allow the graft to properly take hold and heal. For most people, that kind of recovery is an inconvenience. You reschedule a few meetings, you eat soup for a week, you're back to normal fairly quickly. For someone whose job is, quite literally, to talk on camera for an hour every weekday morning in front of millions of viewers, it's a genuinely different proposition. What made this particular story resonate wasn't really the surgery itself. Dental procedures happen to people every day, and most of them don't become a topic of conversation on national television. What stood out was something Mark Consuelos mentioned almost in passing. Kelly's dentist had recommended this exact procedure 5 years earlier. 5 years is a long time to sit with a doctor's recommendation. According to what Consuelos shared on air, Kelly had actually joked about it back when she first heard the recommendation, saying something to the effect that she didn't expect to still be sitting behind that desk 5 years later. And yet, 5 years came and went. She kept hosting the show. She kept showing up at whatever hour her call time demanded. And the recommended procedure kept getting pushed further down the list, year after year, until this particular Monday in July, when it finally happened. There's something worth sitting within that gap. It's not unusual for people to delay medical care they know they need. Plenty of adults do exactly this, whether out of busy schedules, cost concerns, general avoidance, or simply the sense that there's always something more urgent to deal with first. What makes Kelly Ripa's case interesting isn't that she delayed a procedure. It's the specific tension between the nature of her job and the nature of the procedure she was avoiding. Her career depends entirely on her ability to talk, spontaneously and warmly, on camera, 5 mornings a week. The recovery for this surgery required her to do the one thing her job requires most: stop talking for days at a time. It's easy to see, watching from the outside, exactly why that appointment kept getting pushed to next year and then the year after that. Guest co-host Kevin Jonas sat in for Kelly that week, joining Mark Consuelos at the desk. When Consuelos explained that Kelly wasn't permitted to talk during her recovery, Jonas responded with a laugh, saying that had to be the hardest thing she'd ever done. It landed as a joke, the way these things do on a morning talk show, but it also captured something real. Consuelos, for his part, admitted with clear affection that he was doing his best to keep her following the doctor's instructions. A small, human admission that being married to someone this driven means occasionally playing referee to her own instincts. Part 3. A quarter century in front of the camera. To understand why this moment matters, it helps to understand the scale of what Kelly Ripa has actually done for the last 25 years. She was born in Stratford, New Jersey, and grew up in a working-class household. Her father drove a school bus and worked as a labor union official. Her mother kept the home. It's the kind of background that doesn't hand anyone a path into television, but it does tend to instill a particular kind of discipline and groundedness that can carry a person a long way once opportunity does show up. Her opportunity came in the form of an audition for the ABC daytime drama, All My Children. She landed the role of Haley Vaughn in 1990 at the age of 18 or 19 and stayed with the show for roughly 12 years, earning multiple daytime Emmy nominations along the way. Daytime soap operas are, by most accounts from people who've worked in the format, one of the most demanding environments in scripted television. Heavy dialogue loads, tight shooting schedules, and the need to hit specific emotional beats take after take, day after day, for years on end. It's the kind of training ground that either breaks performers or sharpens them considerably. And by every indication, it sharpened Kelly Ripa. It was on that same set, in 1995, that she met Mark Consuelos, who joined the cast to play her character's love interest. The two connected quickly, and by May of 1996, they were married in Las Vegas. They've now been married for close to 30 years and have 3 children together, Michael, Lola, and Joaquin, all of whom have grown into adulthood over the course of their parents' overlapping careers. In 2001, Kelly stepped into the co-host chair on Live, taking over the seat vacated by Kathy Lee Gifford and sitting alongside Regis Philbin, who was by that point already a fixture of American morning television with well over a decade of experience in that exact format. It would have been reasonable to expect an adjustment period as viewers got used to a new dynamic. Instead, by most accounts, Kelly settled into the role quickly, and the pairing worked from early on. She went on to co-host with several different partners over the years, including a lengthy stretch of rotating guest co-hosts, and later Michael Strahan and Ryan Seacrest, before Mark Consuelos officially became her permanent co-host in April of 2023, a rare arrangement that made Live with Kelly and Mark one of the only major national morning programs hosted full-time by a married couple. The show went on to win the Daytime Emmy for Outstanding Talk Show Series in 2025, a recognition that reflected not just ratings, but the specific chemistry between two people who've known each other for 3 decades doing live television together. Over the years, Kelly Ripa has been fairly open in interviews and on her own podcast about various aspects of what it takes to maintain a schedule like hers. She's spoken candidly about experiencing anxiety and panic attacks at points in her career, not in a way designed to generate headlines, but in the matter-of-fact tone she tends to use when discussing things that are simply true about her life. She's talked about the physical discipline required to keep up with a job that starts before dawn most mornings, including consistent exercise and attention to diet and sleep, treating her physical maintenance less like a lifestyle choice and more like a professional necessity. She's also discussed perimenopause and menopause on air, at a time when that topic was still largely avoided in mainstream morning television, choosing directness over the kind of vague euphemism that had defined most public conversation around it until fairly recently. She's also been willing to joke about smaller things. On her podcast, she's mentioned undergoing a minor cosmetic procedure, describing it with the kind of self-deprecating humor that's become one of her signatures, noting that desperate times call for desperate measures. It's a small example, but it fits a pattern. She tends to be candid about the effort involved in maintaining her appearance and her health, without pretending any of it is effortless. What's notable about the gum graft story, set against that backdrop, is the contrast it reveals. Here is someone who has been remarkably forthcoming about the discipline and maintenance her job requires. Someone who treats her physical health as something closely tied to her professional performance. And yet a specific, concrete medical recommendation sat untouched for 5 years. It suggests that even someone this attentive to her own health has a hierarchy of priorities, and that near the top of that hierarchy, above her own short-term comfort, sits the simple fact of showing up for work. Earlier in 2026, in February, Kelly marked the 25th anniversary of her first day co-hosting Live. Anniversaries like that tend to invite a particular kind of question, and this one was no exception. Whether, after a quarter century, she might be thinking about stepping away from the role the way other long-running hosts eventually have. According to reporting around that time, Kelly reached out to Oprah Winfrey, who had ended her own long-running daytime program after 25 years, to talk through the question. Oprah's advice, as later reported, was straightforward: don't leave right now. The timing wasn't right, and the dynamic between Kelly and Mark, working together as a married couple on live television, mattered too much in that particular moment to walk away from. Kelly's response, in her characteristically plain style, was something along the lines of, "If it isn't broken, don't fix it." She stayed. It's worth noting that decision alongside the gum graft story, because the two threads point in the same direction. 25 years in, with an anniversary behind her and a fresh Emmy win on the shelf, Kelly Ripa chose to keep going rather than step back. And in the months that followed that decision, a 5-year-old medical recommendation continued to sit unaddressed until her body and her schedule finally aligned enough for her to take care of I. There's a broader, more relatable thread running underneath all of this, and it's probably part of why the story resonated with as many people as it did. Putting off something a doctor recommended isn't unique to television hosts or celebrities or high achievers of any particular kind. It's an extremely common, very human pattern. People delay dental work, delay physical therapy, delay follow-up appointments, delay all sorts of things that would require them to stop, rest, and let something heal simply because life doesn't feel like it has room for it right now. There's always a reason it feels like the wrong week. And then 5 years pass. What makes Kelly Ripa's version of this pattern notable isn't that it's unusual. It's that it played out in front of an audience, described candidly by her own husband on the very show that had, in a sense, been the reason for the delay in the first place. It's a small, honest window into something a lot of people quietly recognize in themselves: the tendency to keep functioning, keep performing, keep showing up, right up until the moment circumstances finally force a pause. By all accounts, Kelly Ripa's recovery was expected to keep her away from the show only for the remainder of that week, with Kevin Jonas continuing to fill in at the co-host desk alongside Mark Consuelos in the meantime. There was every indication she'd be back at her usual post once her recovery allowed it, doing what she has done for 25 years, showing up, talking, and making an extraordinarily demanding job look effortless. Whether this particular week ends up being a small, isolated blip in an otherwise unbroken 25-year run, or the first quiet sign of a woman beginning to rebalance how much she's willing to put off for the sake of the job, isn't something anyone outside of Kelly Ripa and her family can really answer. What is clear is this: for 5 years, a small, manageable piece of her own health sat waiting behind a busier, louder set of obligations. On July 27th, 2026, for a handful of days, that finally changed.